They started with a vow of poverty. An order of knights so poor, their seal showed two men sharing a single horse. Yet, within 2 centuries, they became one of the most powerful organizations on Earth. They were, in effect, the world's first multinational corporation, an army loyal only to the Pope, and the pioneers of a financial system that's the direct ancestor of our own. In modern terms, their wealth is estimated by some to be over $100 billion. They were richer than kingdoms and more trusted than kings. But they made one fatal mistake. A mistake so big it would echo through the centuries as a warning to anyone who handles power and money. They forgot the golden rule of high finance: never, ever, be the main creditor to a king who has a bigger army than you do. This is the story of how the Knights Templar built a global financial empire, and how one king, drowning in debt, brought it all crashing down. Section 1. The poor fellow soldiers of Christ. To understand how the Templars became the world's bankers, you have to get a picture of the world they were born into. It's the early 1100s. The First Crusade has just ended, and European knights have retaken Jerusalem. For Christians across Europe, this was huge. It sparked a wave of religious excitement, and tens of thousands began making the dangerous, year-long pilgrimage to see the sacred sites for themselves. But the journey was a death trap. The roads were crawling with bandits. Pilgrims, who often carried their life savings to pay for the trip, were sitting ducks. They were robbed, killed, or sold into slavery. The dream of a safe trip to the Holy Land was, for most, just that, a dream. In 1119, a French knight named Hugues de Payens and 8 of his companions saw this problem and decided they would be the solution. They went to King Baldwin II of Jerusalem with a radical idea. They would form a new kind of brotherhood, monastic knights. Like monks, they'd take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. But instead of hiding away in a monastery to pray, they would take up the sword. Their one and only mission: protecting Christian pilgrims on the roads to Jerusalem. King Baldwin gave them a headquarters in a wing of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which Christians believed stood on the ruins of the Temple of Solomon. From this, they took their name, the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon. We just know them as the Knights Templar. In their early years, they were truly poor. They survived on donations, wearing patched-up armor and whatever clothes they were given. That famous seal with 2 knights on 1 horse? It wasn't just a symbol of brotherhood, it was an admission of poverty. They couldn't afford a horse for every knight. They were a small, dedicated, and pretty unremarkable group of warrior monks, trying to fix an impossible problem with little more than faith and steel. Nobody could have guessed that this humble order was about to become the financial titan of the medieval world. Section 2. The vow that built an empire. The Templars' leap from poverty to unimaginable wealth wasn't built on gold or conquest. It was built on a single, priceless idea: trust. In the 12th century, the world was a messy, violent place. Oaths were broken all the time. But the Templars were different. Their unique identity as both elite warriors and devout monks gave them a reputation for discipline and honesty that no one else could match. Think about it from the perspective of a medieval lord. A Templar knight was bound by a sacred vow of poverty. He couldn't own anything himself. Everything he was given belonged to the order. He was also bound by a vow of obedience, answering only to his superiors and the Pope. A famous churchman of the time wrote of them, "A Templar knight is truly a fearless knight, for his soul is protected by the armor of faith, just as his body is protected by the armor of steel." This mix of military skill and monastic integrity made them the most trustworthy people in Europe. A king might seize your land, but the Templars were seen as being above all that, dedicated only to God's work. This reputation started to attract powerful fans. In 1129, at the Council of Troyes, the order was officially recognized by the Catholic Church. This papal blessing was a golden ticket. Suddenly, donations started pouring in from nobles and royals. They were given money, land, and even businesses. In 1139, Pope Innocent II issued a decree called Omne Datum Optimum. This was a game-changer. It granted the Templars extraordinary privileges. They could cross all borders freely, they were exempt from all taxes, and they answered to no authority on earth except the Pope himself. Overnight, the Knights Templar became a power unto themselves, an organization that operated outside the laws of kings. It was this unique status, built on a foundation of absolute trust, that would let them pivot from protecting pilgrims' lives to protecting their fortunes, inventing a system that would change the world forever. Section 3. From protectors to bankers. The real genius of the Knights Templar wasn't on the battlefield, it was in finance. They saw that pilgrims were still getting robbed because they had to carry huge amounts of cash for their journey. The Templars' solution was a stroke of brilliance that basically created the world's first international banking system. The innovation they rolled out around 1150 was the letter of credit. It's a system that feels familiar now, but back then, it was revolutionary. Here's how it worked. Imagine you're a French nobleman planning a pilgrimage. Instead of packing bags of gold and hoping you don't get robbed, you'd go to the local Templar headquarters in Paris. There, you would deposit your money, say, 1,000 gold coins. The Templars would take your gold, and in return, give you a piece of parchment. This wasn't a simple receipt. It was a letter of credit, a carefully written document noting your deposit in a complex cipher known only to the order. Now, you could travel light, making your journey infinitely safer. When you arrived in Jerusalem, you just go to the Templar headquarters there, present your coded letter, and they would give you your 1,000 gold coins, minus a service fee. It was the medieval version of a traveler's check and a wire transfer all rolled into one. The Templars quickly realized they could offer this service to merchants, nobles, and even kings. This whole system depended on two things: the Templars' huge international network and their rock-solid reputation. By the late 12th century, the Templars had nearly 1,000 of these commanderies stretching from England to the Holy Land. You could deposit money in London and withdraw it in Antioch, confident the Templars would honor the deal. This simple, brilliant idea transformed the order. They weren't just soldiers protecting people anymore, they were bankers protecting assets. They were no longer the poor fellow soldiers of Christ. They were on their way to becoming the richest institution in the world. Section 4. The world's first multinational corporation. The letter of credit was the seed from which a global empire grew. The Templars expanded their financial services with astonishing speed, becoming what many historians now call the world's first multinational corporation. Their network of almost 1,000 preceptories across Europe and the Middle East acted like a chain of branch banks. But they did more than just transfer funds. These were fortified estates, farms, and vineyards. The Templars owned huge tracts of land, managed agricultural production, and were involved in import and export. They had their own fleet of ships to control trade across the Mediterranean. For a brief and chaotic period, they even owned the entire island of Cyprus after buying it from Richard the Lionheart. This economic machine generated a constant flow of cash. They were exempt from taxes, which gave them a massive competitive advantage. All this wealth flowed into the order's coffers, creating a vast pool of capital. With that capital, they started offering more complex services. Nobles going on crusade would put their entire estates under Templar management while they were away. Their vaults in London and Paris became the most secure places in Europe. Kings and popes trusted the Templars more than their own treasurers. For over a century, the royal treasury of France was physically located in the Paris Temple, and Templar brothers served as the king's financial advisors. They were a state within a state. They had their own army, answered to no king, paid no taxes, and controlled a financial network that dwarfed any single kingdom. By the end of the 13th century, the paradox was complete. the order founded on poverty had become the wealthiest financial institution in the world. Their success, however, had planted the seeds of their own destruction. They had become too rich, too powerful, and creditors to the most powerful men in Europe. Section 5. The bankers of God, and kings at their peak. The Templars weren't just taking deposits, they were lending. And they were lending big. The church officially forbade usury, charging interest on loans, calling it a sin. But the Templars found clever workarounds. Instead of charging interest, they'd structure loans with rental fees or other charges, allowing them to profit from their vast capital while technically following religious law. Their client list was a who's who of medieval power. They lent money to popes and kings across the continent, managing finances and guaranteeing debts. This made them incredibly powerful. A king might be the ruler of his land, but if his kingdom was in debt to the Templars, he was, in a very real way, under their influence. Their most important, and ultimately most dangerous, client was the King of France, Philip IV. Known as Philip the Fair, for his looks, he was a ruler with huge ambitions and a constant shortage of cash. His costly wars with England and other states meant he was always scrambling for money, and over the years, he had borrowed enormous sums from the Templar order. The Templars were his bankers, his treasurers, and his creditors. But Philip was not a man who liked being in debt. He was an absolute monarch who saw the Templars' independent power and immense wealth within his own kingdom as a threat. This is where the fatal mistake was made. The Templars had more liquid cash than anyone in Europe, and they had lent it to a king who was both powerful and desperate. They thought their papal protection and centuries-old reputation made them untouchable. They were about to learn, in the most brutal way possible, that when a debtor has all the political and military power, a debt can be erased not with gold, but with fire and steel. Section 6. The debtor King Philip IV of France was ruthless and ambitious. His contemporaries called him the Iron King. One bishop famously said of him, "He is neither man nor beast, he is a statue." Philip's vision of an all-powerful French monarchy was an expensive one. His wars constantly drained the treasury. Before he set his sights on the Templars, Philip had already shown his predatory side. He had seized all the assets of the Jewish population of France before expelling them from the kingdom in 1306. He did the same to the Lombard bankers. Each time, it was a quick cash grab to fund his wars. And all the while, he was sinking deeper into debt with the one institution he hadn't touched yet, the Knights Templar. The Templars were everything Philip both needed and resented. He relied on their loans, yet their status as a state within a state, immensely wealthy, militarily organized, and exempt from his taxes, was a direct challenge to his authority. To make matters worse for the Templars, their original purpose was fading. With the fall of Acre in 1291, the last Crusader stronghold in the Holy Land was lost. Their main military mission was over. In the eyes of many, they were now just a European banking conglomerate that had outlived its original purpose. For Philip, it was the perfect storm. He saw an organization that was fabulously wealthy, politically vulnerable, and to whom he owed a crippling amount of money. Why borrow from the Templars when you could just take everything they had? The plan he hatched was one of breathtaking cruelty, designed not just to seize their wealth, but to obliterate the order itself, erasing his debts and a rival power in one move. Section 7. Friday the 13th. The end came with shocking speed. The superstition around Friday the 13th has its roots in what happened at dawn on Friday, October 13, 1307. A month earlier, King Philip had sent secret orders to his officials across France. The sealed letters were all to be opened at the exact same time on the morning of October 13th. The secrecy was absolute. The day before, the Templar Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, had been an honored guest in Paris at a royal funeral. He had no clue what was coming. As the sun rose that Friday, the king's men kicked in doors all over the country, In a single, coordinated raid, they arrested Templars everywhere, from knights to priests to farm managers. It was a stunning operation that instantly decapitated the order in its most important territory. Grand Master Jacques de Molay and the entire senior leadership in France were captured. The official arrest warrant declared, "God is not pleased. We have enemies of the faith in the kingdom." The charges were designed for maximum shock. The Templars were accused of being heretics who spat on the cross, denied Christ, worshipped an idol called Baphomet, and engaged in institutionalized homosexual acts. These charges were almost certainly fabricated, a smear campaign to destroy the Templars' sacred reputation and justify the king's actions. As Philip's men swarmed Templar properties, they expected to find mountains of gold. But when they broke into the main Templar treasury in Paris, they found it nearly empty. Rumors began to fly. Some claimed to have seen heavily laden Templar wagons secretly leaving Paris the night before the arrests. The Templar fleet at the port of La Rochelle was also said to have vanished. Philip had the knights, but their legendary treasure had slipped through his fingers, giving birth to a mystery that would last for over 700 years. Section 8. The Trial of the Century with the Templars in Chains. Philip launched the next phase of his plan: extract confessions, by any means necessary. The arrested knights, many of them old men who had worked as administrators, were thrown into dungeons and systematically tortured. Under such agony, most men will say anything. The vast majority of the knights confessed to whatever their torturers demanded. They admitted to spitting on the cross, worshipping idols, every depraved act Philip's agents had dreamed up. Even the Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, confessed after being brutally tortured. Philip's plan was to present the Pope with a done deal. He knew Pope Clement V, a Frenchman who owed his position to Philip, would be outraged by the arrests. But by securing hundreds of confessions so quickly, Philip could hand the Pope a file so damning he'd have no choice but to authorize an investigation. The plan worked. A month after the arrests, Clement issued a papal bull ordering all Christian monarchs to arrest the Templars in their own kingdoms. The response outside of France was mixed. In places like Portugal, the king refused to persecute the knights and instead reorganized them into a new order, the Order of Christ. But in France, the trials were a sham. When many of the Templars later recanted their forced confessions, Philip had them declared relapsed heretics and burned dozens of them at the stake. This wasn't about justice, it was a state-sponsored robbery, disguised as piety. Section 9. The flames of betrayal. For 7 years, the fate of the Knights Templar hung in the balance. Finally, in 1312, Pope Clement V, under extreme pressure from King Philip, officially dissolved the order. He didn't actually declare them guilty of heresy, but disbanded them on the grounds that their reputation was too damaged to continue. The order that had served the Church for 2 centuries was wiped out by a papal decree. Their vast properties were ordered to be transferred to their rivals, the Knights Hospitaller, though Philip and other kings made sure to take a hefty cut first. But for Jacques de Molay, the story wasn't over. In March 1314, the nearly 70-year-old Grand Master was brought before a crowd at Notre Dame in Paris to hear his final sentence: life in prison. After 7 years of imprisonment, something inside the old knight snapped. Standing before the public, Jacques de Molay found his courage. He loudly recanted his confession, proclaiming his innocence and that of the Templar order. It was a final, stunning act of defiance. King Philip was furious. That very same day, he ordered de Molay and another Templar leader to be burned at the stake. The pyre was built to burn slowly, to prolong their suffering. As the flames rose, accounts say Jacques de Molay showed no fear. From the fire, he is said to have shouted a final, terrible curse, summoning Pope Clement and King Philip to appear before God's judgment within a year and a day. Whether it was a curse or a coincidence, the prophecy came true. Pope Clement V died just 1 month later. King Philip the Fair died before the year was out from a stroke he suffered while hunting. And within 14 years, the 300-year-old Capetian dynasty collapsed when all of Philip's sons died without leaving a male heir. The order was gone, but its last Grand Master had his revenge from the ashes. The story of the Templars is a brutal lesson in power, finance, and betrayal. But it's also a story filled with enduring mysteries. So I want to ask you, what part of the Templar legend haunts you the most? The lost treasure, the secret rituals, or the curse of the last Grand Master? Let me know in the comments below. Section 10. Where did the money go? So, what happened to the Templars' legendary empire? Did it all just vanish? The truth is a little more complicated and a lot more mundane. First, it's important to remember that most of the Templars' wealth wasn't in gold and silver. It was in property, thousands of farms, castles, and businesses across Europe. After the order was dissolved, these assets were supposed to go to the Knights Hospitaller. In reality, kings like Philip IV held onto the properties for years, draining them of revenue before handing over what was left. So, the bulk of the Templar real estate empire was simply absorbed by their rivals and the crowns of Europe. But what about the liquid cash, the treasure that supposedly vanished from the Paris Temple? This is where history ends and legend begins. The empty vaults have fueled centuries of speculation. One popular theory is that the treasure was taken to the port of La Rochelle and loaded onto the Templar fleet, which then sailed off into the unknown. Did the ships go to Scotland, where some believe the mysterious Rosslyn Chapel is a monument to their presence? Did they cross the Atlantic and bury it on Oak Island in Nova Scotia? To date, not a single coin of this legendary hoard has ever been found. The most likely story is that whatever liquid wealth the Templars had, which was probably far less than the legends claim, was successfully hidden by the knights who escaped and was either spent over time, absorbed into other orders like the Order of Christ in Portugal, or simply lost. The Great Lost Treasure probably never existed as a single stash of gold. The real treasure was something else entirely. Section 11. The Ghost in the Machine. As an organization, the Knights Templar were utterly destroyed. King Philip I. He got rid of his creditors and crushed a rival. But in the long run, the Templars had the last laugh. Their true legacy wasn't hidden gold. Their real treasure was the system they created. The ideas they perfected, letters of credit, international banking, asset management, didn't die with them. They became a ghost in the machine of the emerging European economy. The financial vacuum left by the Templars was soon filled by others, like the great Italian banking families, who used the very techniques the Templars had developed. The concept of a trusted third party facilitating complex transactions across borders became the bedrock of modern capitalism. Every time you use a credit card, wire money, or put assets in a trust, you are using a direct descendant of the system the Templars built nearly 900 years ago. The ultimate irony is that while King Philip destroyed the men, he couldn't destroy their idea. He seized their property but inherited a broken system. His officials were unable to manage the Templars' sophisticated operations, and many profitable estates fell into ruin. The fall of the Knights Templar remains a chilling lesson. No institution is too big to fail, especially when it finds itself on the wrong side of a desperate king. They built an empire on trust and innovation, only to see it annihilated by the raw power of a debtor who controlled the army. They were warriors, monks, and bankers. But in the end, their greatest contribution, the financial system that outlived them all, became their most enduring monument and their final, silent victory.